Do you feel disconnected from others during this COVID pandemic and working from home? What can you do to connect? I'm Lynda Katz Wilner, founder of Successfully Speaking. And on this Successful Speaking series, we have an expert who can answer that question. Holland Haiis is a world-renowned thought leader on human connection and was named one of 100 global thought leaders. Holland is known for engaging, empowering, and igniting audiences to take action. She is a professional speaker, author of Consciously Connecting, executive coach, and a business consultant. Holland helps individuals and organizations to change behavior that impacts productivity, creativity, and time management to leverage their greatest assets, which are people, time, and opportunities. She provides powerful human relationship solutions by focusing on neuroscience, mindset, and behavior. Welcome, Holland. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Lynda. I've really been looking forward to this, so thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, Holland, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get to this point as being a successful speaker on this topic?
So I think like most people in life, many of us don't start knowing what we're going to end up doing. And I'm no different.
Mhm.
I started with the acting bug as a child, and really I was going to be an actress, and I was for a while. And when schooling opportunities brought me out to the Northeast, and I decided that I would be the next Meryl Streep. Apparently they only need one. So that was a really big stumbling block for me. And so, I went as far as I could with acting, but I also needed a job. And so I worked in a lot of offices. That was my skill set. My skill set was more around business, my background, psychology, theater, and business. And so it didn't really translate into waiting tables. And actually tried to get a few jobs doing that. And because I didn't have experience, they said no. So I always fit into offices. And when acting kind of shifted, things kind of dried up, and industrial films dried up, everything was a very different landscape in the city. And it was much more name recognition to off Broadway and off Broadway. I still needed to earn money. I still needed to pay rent. And I ended up in law firms, and then I ended up in HR, and looking at teams, looking at culture, long before we were really having those conversations. And when you think about that, when you're in an organization and you're looking through the eyes and the lens of the people, the aspect of again, whether we call it human capital, human relationships, when we're looking at it through that aspect, that's very much in the same eyes of collaborating on stage, film, television, stage, because it's always collaborative.
Well, and I'm going to stop you for a second because that was my next question, that I'm sure having the background in acting was a wonderful skill set to bring into the workplace.
Yes. Yeah. It allows for thinking quickly. It allows for improvisation. And I think what it really gives the opportunity for is flexibility. And we all need that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then the acting, like you said, the improv, because I know that's a common thread. So many successful speakers have some background in improv, but also then when you have to get up and speak in front of a group, that's not something that foreign to you, right? Because isn't public speaking some form of performing?
It is a form of performing, yet it's a little different.
Tell me how.
When you're on stage, you are embodying the words of the playwright, the author, the person who's created the script. your movements, you then move in the way that the character moves you, and or a director, because you've got to be downstage, you've got to hit the mark, you've got to be there by a certain point in the script in order for the next action and reaction to happen. And you also are embodying a character. So you're going to the breadth and depth of a character, which hopefully what makes it so much fun, it's not you.
Mm-hmm.
When you're
Sounds easier.
Yeah. When you're publicly speaking, what it took me a long time to realize is that when I started speaking at conferences, it's really like crafting a one-woman show.
Mm.
You are your own writer. You are your own director. You do your own editing, what works, what doesn't work. And very often you're not in front of a live audience yet. So you've got to be able to be flexible and judge yourself fairly, what's good and what isn't. So you really need a fair lens. And then it's you who are exposed. You're not in a costume of a character from the 1920s or the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You are in this embodiment of yourself.
Mm-hmm. So I think that for some people that's extremely challenging, but that's why you have to be so authentic as a speaker and not try to be somebody else.
Do not try to be someone else. It's about being yourself. And I think if there's one tip that any of us have learned, and one tip any of us can really truly share with those who want to be better speakers and really want to embrace the stage and are scared of it, is that it's what is unique about you. What do you bring to the table that is unique, that is different? Because you are also this extraordinary speaker, and you and I could not be more different. We've had different experiences. We look different. We have different experiences. We talk about different topics, both extremely valuable. And so it's really not about looking at things from competition, which is easy to do. Mm-hmm. It's really looking at what's unique and genuine.
Mm-hmm. And you know, if we all, even if you and I spoke in the same subject matter, we have to be different. Why do people want everybody to be the same? That would certainly have no interest, and you'd like to come back every year to the same organization and company and speak, but sometimes you need variety. And so sometimes we want to change it up by different speakers from different perspectives.
100%. We also, you know, again, those, as you're saying, the perspectives and the life experience, we couldn't possibly see things through the same lens. And I think that's the beauty of even speakers co-collaborating, which sometimes people are very afraid of doing, is that co-collaboration, because she's talking about my thing. And it's like, we're helping to educate and to share knowledge and wisdom and trainings. And it sometimes is really great, because if I don't get through to everyone, which no one does, then Lynda is able to really share and get through. And that's how we get that 100%.
And that's another whole situation of two speakers playing off each other. Or I see that more with training than necessarily keynotes.
Yeah. Yes. 100%.
And I do want to get to your area of specialty in a moment, but how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself more as a keynote speaker, Holland, or as more of a trainer, or a combination?
That's really interesting, because I think what we're all experiencing is there is this seismic shift in the world. And what does it really mean now to be a speaker? And what are the opportunities for speaking? And has the webinar / how we get content, value of content versus inspiration versus, and I think people are looking at this a little differently than they have in the past. And so I view myself as someone who is a thought leader, bringing valuable information, helping and empowering individuals to look at what may be an everyday or even a complex problem in a different light, in a different way, having other tools and techniques to give you solutions where you're stuck. And so that is done through speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it is done in a larger arena, which is a conference, and sometimes it is done internally within
Mm-hmm.
organizations. To
Mm-hmm.
me, it all kind of, did the chicken come before the egg or the egg before the chicken? I don't know. Do we need to know?
Different situations. And again, we talked about now with so many things. You mentioned webinar, and I know so many of us shy away from that word now because webinar used to mean just really sending out information. And now we're talking more about virtual experiences.
Yes.
So people are engaging. And so things have shifted. But you mentioned something else, and I don't want to miss the opportunity to talk to you about that. And that's your book, Consciously Connecting. Because before I actually met you, before we talked, I looked at some videos on your website, and I know that I was guilty of some of the problems that people have that prevent the connections. So let's unpack that a little bit, but talk first about your book, The Consciously Connecting, and what does that mean?
Okay. I'm excited to hear about when you talk about some of the issues that you discovered you have. So I'm excited to unpack that as well. So really the idea came about, I was doing a lot of corporate trainings, and what I kept hearing from people is they were disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't using that word. My brain kept coming back to that word over and over again, that there was a disconnect from their boundaries. There was a disconnect from what we now are terming self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hearing it as play dates and playtime and time to explore cities. And when they're on vacation, they're tethered to devices. And um, the goals that they want for themselves personally and in business,
Mm-hmm.
how to explore, again, friendships, relationships, don't have time. And I kept thinking, how is everyone so disconnected? Is there something wrong with me? Am I weird? I don't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it really took me on this journey of asking a lot more questions. It happened where I really had the great understanding from losing my flip phone, having to get a smartphone, and very quickly, in less than 48 hours, being down the same rabbit hole of what I now really saw, heard, and felt was disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I get it. I get it now. So I was really late to this smartphone revolution. I fought it. I didn't want to be tethered in that way. It was the best gift the universe ever gave me, for me to lose my phone, because it took me to a place of greater empowerment for myself and being able to help others as well.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes our own experiences make us realize that there's a problem there or a situation there that you can certainly help other people with.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and I have this
Yes.
vivid memory of being on vacation once with my family, and we were sitting outside at an outdoor restaurant. This is pre-COVID, many years ago. And there was somebody walking up the street with his phone, and he was looking and looking, and we saw what was happening. There was a low branch on a tree right in front of the restaurant. And he walked right into this. We saw it coming, walked right into it, had no awareness of his surroundings. So I think that's the extreme that you might be talking about, that look around and smell the roses and see what's in front of you and the beautiful trees and whatever else it might be. But some people disconnect that much. Many of us at different times too.
It's interesting you choose the word awareness, because that was exactly what I thought of with the book and the titling, which is to be conscious is to be aware.
Mm-hmm.
And when we connect, it's a uniting, joining, and linking.
Mm-hmm.
So the awareness of how we unite, join, and link with everything that's happening in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it's our vacation time, whether it's what we need to do at work with the team, how do we function? Are we supportive in the team? Do we always have to lead? Are we willing to follow? All of these different areas that we haven't explored, and we've been a little lost because we've been so connected, over connected to technology.
Let me ask you this. Now there are so many apps out there that professional speakers use to engage with the audience. And I actually have something coming up where we talked about the fact that maybe everybody should bring their phones so that we can do some of the polling. What are your thoughts about using the technology in your presentations?
So I always ask folks if you are mastering technology or technology is mastering you.
Mhm.
And I ask that very specifically because I want people to be very clear about the purpose, the intent behind using it. So for polling, I think the purpose and the intent is wonderful. Number one, it keeps us engaged because
Mhm.
right now we're not face to face. You and I are not in the same room as much as we would love that to be. It can't be. And so, since we're all scattered in many different cities and continents, it's a beautiful way to really see instantaneously in the polling.
Mhm.
It is a great way to have engagement. This is where technology is serving us in the most positive way. And then when we're done with it, to continue carrying on and to really pay attention to you, then after we're done with polling, we want to consider putting our phones away, shutting them off, tucking them away and in a drawer or something.
It's interesting. Just this yesterday, I was talking to one of my clients who happens to be in Europe, and he was just talking about how nowadays work is so isolating and he feels so disconnected. And they're having their Microsoft Teams meetings. And that's all great. But I said to him, does everybody turn their camera on? And he said, no, not necessarily. And I said, I feel that with this working from home due to the COVID pandemic, we have wonderful opportunities. And I know you talk a lot about opportunities. These are great opportunities to, when you have team meetings, turn your cameras on and engage with people. And so I see there's a big positive side to the technology that can help us feel engaged when we don't feel engaged. What are your thoughts about that, Holland?
I agree with you completely. And I've been helping a lot of organizations over that hump of how do we stay connected? How do we remain collaborative with each other and creative and productive? And so when we don't see each other, right, there is this huge disconnect. And so they are missing an opportunity. We also then have the flip side of that, right? Because there's a positive and a negative scenario both ways, which is we're all zoomed out. We have Zoom fatigue and one more Zoom meeting. Oh my gosh, do we have to see one more person? So it's really about that compromise of when it really is critical to see people, and we want that engagement, and we want to make sure that everyone understands what they're accountable to do, what they're responsible for, who they're teaming up with, and we can have that shared experience on the screen versus when it's more of a work meeting or a work getting together and we don't need to see each other. We're going through some of the logistics of the project. We're trying to figure out best solutions before we send the pitch deck out. We don't always have to be seeing each other for some of those more working meetings, if you will.
And we can strategize because I had two clients that I was working with at their company, and they were supposed to run these meetings remotely now. And it was more technology. And they said, well, people just need to see the website. They need to see what we're putting up on the screen. And I said, that's fine. But if you're leading the meeting, come on in the beginning and let them see who you are, make your connection, and say, I'm closing my camera until the end so that you can focus on the screen. And I guess that's the conscious connecting that you're talking about. Think about what you're doing. But I think there are benefits to having that camera open. But like you said, it may not be necessary, or that person doesn't want to be looking all over their screen and have somebody see that they're doing that. But
Yes.
turn it on, turn it off. Can't we do both?
And we've got to remember that there are some people who are more challenged than I might be, which is they've got children who
Right.
are in and out and children who need that attention, and they feel very frantic having to almost perform if you will, and show that I'm a dutiful coworker and I'm paying attention to you when they've got this thing going on over here that might turn into a catastrophe. And so again, it gives people a little breathing room. It gives them a little space to really relax into what it is that we're doing on this strategy call or moving the project forward, where I don't feel I have to perform, and I can again be a part of and enjoy the time with my team.
Now, and I could talk to you about this for a very long time, but I want to get back to the speakers and your experience as a speaker. Tell me how the COVID pandemic has affected your speaking business.
Well, it's a huge impact because so many of those larger conferences, even the smaller conferences, many of them canceled for last year. They just flat out canceled. And then there were those that decided to go virtual. And so that was, learning different technologies and what different groups wanted. And sometimes different groups didn't even know what they wanted. Sometimes they'd say, we don't want any deck. And then, 2 days before, they're like, we've rethought this. We want a deck. So again, it's been a huge shift. Boy, if we were ever tested in flexibility, I think 2020 was the year to really find out, how are you doing with flexibility? Carol Dweck, do you have that fixed mindset or do you have a growth mindset? And I think those of us that have the growth mindset realized, at least for 2020 and onward, and who knows how long, it was going to be a very different world. And what did we have to do to adapt? What did we need to learn? Who could we reach out to that was smarter than us, that we could say, I'm so lost, I can't figure this out, Lynda, help me. And there was a lot of the reciprocity to speaking with other folks and people who had tried one type of software. And so we were all learning together, and it's shifted in that I think it was a rough year for everybody, speaker or anyone. And now we stay flexible and we move forward. I looked at it as, I lost a tremendous amount of money and a tremendous amount of opportunities. And at the end of the day, I'm also grateful for the gifts that the pandemic brought. So I look at it and I say, you know what? It's pretty even. We can always go out and make money, and we can always find new clients. It's the other opportunities that we've gained from the pandemic that we don't often get to recalibrate and settle into. And so for that, it's been okay.
And what you're saying is the silver lining and your mindset, because think of what your skill set was January of 2020 as far as technology. And look at all the possibilities and different ways, or just even having this interview series, that's become the way people are connecting and sharing ideas and information. So I like to think that there is a lot of good that has come from it, because it's forced us to be more creative in what is a speaking business.
What is a speaking business? Yes. And I don't even know that I can define that for myself moving forward. I think it's going to be very different as we move out each year, because 2021 is already proving to be different than 2020. And so I also believe 2022 will be very different than 2021. I have no idea how it will be in that conference space, in that space of consulting and working within corporations. Again, unsure what that blueprint looks like, but ready for the ride, whatever it is.
And we can be sure that it's not going to be like 2019. I don't think things are going back. I think there are so many more opportunities we see that we have, and hopefully we'll continue to capitalize on it.
I think so.
Now, as a speech pathologist by training, I always think about the voice and how we take care of our voice, because we are professional speakers. Holland, is there anything you are conscious about or careful about in preparation for speaking or when you know you have a lot of speaking engagements? Do you think about your
I
voice?
do. I do. I make sure that I hydrate with a lot of water. And that will start, that doesn't start, you can't wake up the morning of a keynote and hydrate.
Right.
You've got to have been thinking about that before. I'm very conscious around, I'm not a huge drinker. But if I'm in a fun city or a fun
Mm.
country and there might be a drink that I'm unaware of, I would taste it. But if it's the day before I'm going on stage, I won't,
Mm-hmm.
because it dries my throat out and I'm aware of that. And I don't want to be choking and I don't want to be looking for water. So again, being really aware of this instrument and what it needs, trying to get a good night's sleep. I try to be very aware of that. And again, a couple days up to. Been a little harder. I'm going to just full disclosure. It's been harder to get those nights filled with sleep during the pandemic with speaking engagements. It's because I've come from that space and place of worrying, like, wait, the camera, the lights, and so you're up most of the night going through that and you don't
Mhm.
get the best amount of sleep. However, I try.
Mhm.
I disconnect from technology hours before. So tomorrow morning I have a bright and early keynote. It's global, many time zones. It will be 8 a.m. Eastern time zone. I will disconnect from all devices no later than 8 p.m. tonight to
Mhm.
give my brain that time to really relax and again thinking and focusing on what I need to do for the group tomorrow.
Mhm.
So disconnecting technology, shutting everything down. So those are some of the things that I do. What
Mhm.
about you? What do you do?
Well, exactly what you said about hydrating, and most people don't hydrate enough. But drinking water, and one little tip, Holland, if you are going to have a glass of wine, replace it with a glass, not replace it, drink a glass of water to compensate for the dehydration of the wine. So for every drink you have, hopefully it's not more than one or two, but every drink you
I couldn't
have
hold one
just as
or
many
two.
glasses of water. Well, I could never go beyond one, but have just as many glasses of water. I stay away from coffee. Coffee is going to make you jittery. I stay away from dairy. Dairy makes me clear my throat a lot. I warm up my voice, even the humming or even scales or practice speaking. You'd never go run without stretching. So why would you get up and speak for 2 hours or an hour without warming up your voice? If you travel, which a lot of us don't travel now, humidify your voice by going in the shower and steaming up the shower. Because if you're on a plane, you're going to be very dehydrated from that air. So there are a lot of hygiene tips that we can take into account. And I've mentioned this before on this series, but when you're hydrating, don't drink that ice water in the conference rooms or the ballrooms. Drink room temperature water
Yes.
because the ice water makes everything contract. So those are some things. I'd never have ice cream, and I wouldn't eat much if I were the speaker after a meal. I usually eat after I speak. I couldn't
Me
eat
too.
and then get up. I'd be clearing my throat for the next half hour. So
I eat after as well, and the vocal warm ups. That's
yes, the vocal warm-ups, many people do not do, but
really.
that's our voice. Without the voice, how can we speak?
Yeah,
We
it would
deliver.
be rough to get up in here. Although I'm going now back to conferences, as you've now said, many don't. And I'm thinking, there have been those morning voices where you stop and think, that sounds like they just got up.
Mhm. Could be staying up late, could be drinking, could be allergies, it could be the travel, it could be so many things.
Oh, that's funny.
So hopefully those tips will help you too, but it sounds like you certainly have a lot of vocal hygiene in play already, and you're very aware of that. I know we spoke about some advice for new speakers, and we have limited time. Is there any other nuggets that you feel you want to highlight that I didn't ask you?
Oh gosh, I think just going circling back with new speakers, I think it's really about um, finding your voice. And I
Mhm.
don't mean from the perspective of, oh, we're not talking about that. We're talking about finding your voice
Mhm.
as, again, focusing what's unique about you, what's unique about your experiences. And we're all unique, and we don't often spotlight that. And
Mhm.
that's what sets you and your message apart.
Mhm. Great, great way to end this. We don't want to stand up there reading a talk. We want to be ourselves. And so when I go see Holland, I know that's Holland and she's different from the other speaker who spoke the day before. And hopefully that connects, and we are unique, and we want our listeners to get that and feel like we're not just talking at them, but speaking with them,
Yes.
because that's most engaging. And I think I'm preaching to the choir with you because you know so much about consciously connecting with people. And I know you must be doing that every time you're giving a presentation or a keynote or a training or conversation or a focus group or whatever that might be. All of that is public speaking. We don't always think of that. Think of that. Holland, thanks so much for all of this information. It's a pleasure speaking with you, and I know we can keep talking about this. And I will consciously connect by consciously disconnecting sometimes.
All right.
That's
Excellent.
important.
Thank
So
you so much for having me, Lynda. And I'm so grateful for your audience. And I hope they find value in this. So
uh,
thanks
I'm
for having
sure they will. Thanks again. And everybody look forward to another interview on successful speakers, because we can learn a lot from the people who have achieved that status in their career. See you next time.